Hey, let's pot up some pepper plants today. Well, it's our average last frost date, but it's a blustery day. It's kind of cool tonight. It's going to get into the 40s for the next couple of nights before it warms up, hopefully permanently. But you can see that I can't really work out here. It's been rainy. There's a front blowing through. So we're going to go indoors and we're going to pot up some seedlings. Let's go. Okay, well, here I am now up under the lights here where my pepper seedlings are growing. Now, these little fellas are starting to look stressed out, and the reason they're looking stressed out, look how leggy they are, is because right about the critical time when these little seedlings started putting on their first and second set of true leaves, the power went out. Not only did the power go out, it got very frigid in the house. And it stayed that way for an extended period of time. Right when these seedlings really needed that warmth, they had no lights for 4.5 to 5 days. And well, that really caused them to search for the light at the window and get kind of leggy and stretch. And well, they're really stressed out. And you can see that some of the damage has been done on these leaves, that when the lights came back on, they were not really quite ready for it. And well, there's a lot of damage on here. So I want to go and pot them up and give them a soil that has a little more fertility. I want to pot them up a little higher on the stem so we can begin to develop some root systems along that stem and give them a better chance. These won't go out into the garden for another 3 or 4 weeks, but I want to get them growing in some good medium. So let's do that now. I'll show you how easy it is. I'm going to be using these recycled pots. These are little pots that you get when you buy flowers at a big box store, and I'd say they're about, what, 12 ounces, I don't know, maybe a cup and a half. They're just the right size for what we need to do today. And I'm going to use these peppers. This one is a Jedi jalapeno. It's a nice hybrid from Johnny Seeds. And I'm going to plant them up. This is a little bit early. You might want to wait a little bit longer. I usually like to wait till I have 6 sets of true leaves. These leaves right here, let me get a good example here and pop them out and show you. On this plant, these are not true leaves. These are the original leaves. The cotyledons is what they're called, and they come up. They're the 2 halves of the seed. All the energy the plant needs to grow is stored up in these leaves to get that little seedling going. These are true leaves, and I've got 2 good sets of true leaves, and I've got another set coming up at the growing tip. This is a little bit too early, but I'm going to do it anyway because look, my root systems. The root systems are starting to circle a little bit, just a little bit. Still, you could leave this another week, maybe 2 weeks, but I need these to get in the pot now. I'm just using an average commercial potting mix, an actual potting mix. And so I'm going to fill this up just about halfway with this potting mix. Now this is different than seed starting mix. Potting mix has a little bit of fertilizer in it. It's got some compost, and in here we will find some nutrition for these little plants. Seed starting mix doesn't have any nutrition in it. What I've done is, once I saw a set of true leaves and the budding section of the second set of true leaves, I began to fertilize about every 10 days with a very mild mixture of fish emulsion, just a high nitrogen, low dose fertilizer. And when you have seedlings growing in your trays, that's a good practice, is to let them have a bit of fertilizer to compensate for the fact that the seed starting mix we use doesn't have anything in it. So we're going to put this guy in here, and he will have some nutrition. In this potting mix, we find in the analysis there is a little bit of bat guano, there's some potash, there's some compost, there's some worm castings, there's some kelp meal, and it's got a little bit of everything. Very low dose, but it's got stuff in it that our plant needs. So we're just going to take our pot, make a little divot for our plant to sit in. Now see this guy here? You can grow 2 pepper plants in one pot usually. That usually doesn't make much of a difference. However, this guy is much shorter than this tall leggy one. I'm going to bury this one all the way up to the very first node where those cotyledons are. So this guy is going to have to come out because he would be under the surface. So we're going to drop that in there. You don't really have to break the roots up too much, especially on a stressed plant like this. And I'm just going to pour this potting mix all around. We're going to plant him all the way up to that first node there. And I'm doing this indoors, so I've got this tray here so that I don't make a huge mess. But I probably will make a mess anyway. Alright, so that's all there is to it. Now, be sure you label your peppers. I've got a bunch of varieties this year, so I need to make sure what I've got. Alright, so this guy, I'll water it in, and once I give this plant a little bit of time to recover from the stress of being potted up, come in again with a little bit of fish fertilizer or a all-purpose low-dosage liquid fertilizer. Very low dosage, so we can just ease this plant into its new environment. And I'll keep this fertilized maybe once, maybe twice before I put it in, because remember, there's some nutrition in this soil right now. We're going to let this plant get settled into its new home, and its next home will either be in the garden beds or in a larger permanent pot. Now, some of these very leggy pepper plants are 2 or 3 to a cell. If they are relatively even in their growth, then you can just plant 2 of them in a pot, and you can grow them up. Some of these chili plants, these pepper plants, don't mind growing up together in the same pot. And so that's what we're going to do with this. Notice I can plant them up to about right there, and we should get a little bit of root growth out of these stems. They're not as prone to root from the stem as tomatoes are, but if you look really closely on a pepper stem, you can see the hairs there that have the potential to become roots. And so we're going to plant this guy pretty deep here and cover those stems. That will also help the plants be a little bit more stable, not waving around in the wind in the future when they go outdoors. Now, we will have to harden these off. You always have to harden off your plants that have been raised indoors, because you just stick them directly out into the sun and you're going to have a lot of trouble. These tender leaves are used to fluorescent lights or LEDs or whatever you're using to grow them indoors. They're not used to all that solar energy that you're going to get outside, and they will suffer from sun scald and possibly even die. So the hardening off process is something you have to do with these. When you transplant, it's best not to water beforehand. The root ball will hold together a little bit better if it's a little bit dry. And so we're just going to fill in around this little guy all the way up to as far as we can get this one. I have found that a plastic label with a simple pencil does not fade. And it doesn't come off easily, but it doesn't fade. Sharpies, I found, even those extra fade-resistant Sharpies, never have worked for me. They always tend to fade. When sowing pepper seedlings, you can see that sometimes they sprout at different rates. All of these pepper seedlings were sown at the same time. Yet here's one that just now came up. It's not even dropped its seed shell there. Here's one that came up a little bit earlier, but this one right here was the first one that came up. So even in the same cell, if you don't see your seedlings coming up after 7 to 10 days, which is about how long these took to come up, give them some more time, because this fella just now came up, and it's been about a month and about 5 to 6 weeks, maybe even 7 weeks, and that one just now came up. So don't give up on your little pepper plants if they're not coming up right away. Here's the one we looked at that has the tiny little seedling, the middle-aged seedling, and the older seedling. I like the real deep green on this guy, so I'm going to thin these other 2 out of here, and we're going to just focus on this one particular plant. All right, real easy. We're going to plant him real deep. That's a good-looking, healthy plant. An update on my little pathetic single seed challenge. This is an ahi charapita, and it's not doing well. It's the same kind as these. I actually planted some because I need this plant. I want it. So normally for the single seed challenge, you would do something a little more unique to your garden, but yeah, that's my single seed challenge, and it's not doing so hot. I will update you with a single seed challenge update soon, but we have good news, we have bad news. The good news is we're all probably going to start over. Now, I don't want you to be alarmed when you pot up your plant or when you're growing seedlings and you see the cotyledons, the first set of seeds, you see them looking sad like this and turning yellow. That's what they do, and they're going to drop off. In fact, we can pluck them off of there if we want to. They've done their job. They have supported the plant, and now the true leaves are left behind. Just a little soaking for each one, and then from here on out I'll probably just water these from the bottom. But I want to settle this soil in around the root ball, get good contact with the roots that are in here. And so we'll just give them a little drink. Pepper plants and chilies don't need a lot of moisture to be retained in the soil. They are arid. Naturally, they're kind of dry climate plants, and they don't really respond well to overwatering. In fact, you can really stunt them if you overwater. And I may be giving these just a little bit too large of a dose here, but again, it'll drain out really quick in this deep soil. So we're just watering them to settle the soil down around, and this will do for quite a while. Now, when you have them under grow lights, especially if you've got grow lights like I have, these big fluorescent bulbs, you want to watch that your seeds don't dry out. And just because it's dry on the top doesn't mean that your roots are not sitting in soil that's retaining moisture. These deep pots won't be dry down here. Sometimes if you want to do an experiment, you could take a pot and put some potting soil in it and water it just like you do your other plants. And when you start to freak out because the top of your soil is dry and you can't shove your finger down there because you've got a plant in there, you can have one set aside that doesn't have a plant, and you can dig down and say, ah, okay, so there is moisture down in there and my plants are good. Your plants will tell you when they need water. I do have fluorescent lights, and this light fixture set tends to get hot. When I turn on all the bulbs, that's 6 T5 bulbs in here. So I like to put a little thermometer about soil level, and I like to keep it around 80 to 85 degrees. Not really higher, although sometimes it'll get up in the 90s just right in this area. But that'll keep them nice and toasty and nice and happy. Pepper plants can be perennials. If you have a low frost region, if you live in a place where it doesn't get really cold, you can grow pepper plants through the winter, and they will drop their leaves and they will look sad like this guy here. This guy was brought in during the freeze, and this fellow right here was brought in during the freeze, and they were semi-dormant. You can see they get real woody. They're kind of like a woody shrub, and I have pruned this one up. All the dead growth that was on this I've pruned off. This is going into its 3rd year. This is a jalapeno plant, and it was, pretty tall. But you can see it's starting to put on leaves, and some of the leaves that it began a little early have died off, and these will eventually fall off, but it's putting on new growth. And this plant will give me more peppers. I like that plant. These, the same thing, this little chili pepper here, you can see the fruits are ripening up and drying, and I'm going to pluck those once they're dry enough to harvest some seed. But yeah, this one has done quite well, and it's nice and bushy. It's got some main growing stems there. I'm going to pot that up this year, and you'll be amazed how much that will flush out. You can already see the new growth coming in. All those will be leaves, and I can come in here and trim off these dead ends. And that guy's been pruned down pretty severely just above the fresh, the stem that has sap in it. But that will give me another year of growth. Pepper plants, chilies can grow like perennials if you are able to protect them from the frost. Hey, thanks for joining me today on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. I hope you like our content. Please share and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time. Happy gardening. Bye-bye.